Well, I found it. I found a 2021 Ram 2500 with a HEMI. Believe it or not, this is a hard truck to find. Every truck on the lot, that brown, I don't know if you guys can see that brown truck right down here, all the way down to this red one, including this white one, they're all diesel. Now, a lot of people would say that the diesel is the better way to go, especially for towing. I'm going to tell you why that's not the case here with this Ram 2500. So let's go ahead and go over it real quickly. The first thing you have to consider when you're looking at diesel versus gas is 100% is cost. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Anytime you're looking at pricing for a HD truck, one of the biggest and most costliest options is going to be that Cummins for the Ram, Duramax for the GM trucks, and the Power Stroke for the Fords. In this case, the stock or the standard engine is going to be a 6.4 liter V8. So if you're opting this truck, the only thing that I would recommend is what this truck has, which is that 410 axle ratio. This truck is going to give you max tow and it's going to give you max payload because of the overall options. So you don't have to pay for this engine basically, right? But you do have to pay for this one. No matter what trim level you get with a Ram truck, the HEMI is standard. So as you guys can see here, this truck does have the standard Cummins, which is $9,455. But keep in mind, I think that if you're going to get a gas truck and you're planning on towing with it, you really have to check the box for that 410 axle for max tow. So figure it's going to cost you $9,255 difference in the trucks because you cannot get a 410 axle with this Cummins. So right out of the gate, you're going to spend $9,255 in comparison with these trucks. So you have to ask yourself, how much are you going to have to use this truck in comparison with that truck? So I think that the first reason why the HEMI is better is because you save right out of the gate over $9,000 in options. The next reason why I think the HEMI is a better option than this Cummins is because, believe it or not, this has an 8-speed transmission. You heard me right. If you get a HEMI, you have an 8-speed transmission. Back in 2019, they did add that transmission for the HD lineup. Now, I have towed with that transmission on a few occasions, and I have found that that transmission is great when it comes down to holding gears, and it does run the RPMs low when you are on flat grounds too. It's not busy, and I really do think it's a better option than what you would find in this truck, which is the 68 RFE. And from what I've been told, I mean, this transmission is reliable. And another benefit obviously is when you are towing or when you're just cruising with an 8-speed transmission, this is going to allow you to run at lower RPMs. So this should have comparable MPGs in comparison with the Cummins, especially when this has MDS. Now, if you don't know what MDS is, it's multi-displacement. And what that does is it will allow the engine to drop down to 4 cylinders. And what that'll do is that'll pretty much help it to get even better fuel economy. You cannot get that with the inline 6 Cummins, however. So I think that with this transmission and with the HEMI with the MDS, it should allow you to get pretty decent fuel economy. Now, obviously the 410 axle is going to affect it a little bit. So if you are concerned about MPGs, you might want to look at the standard 373 that comes in this truck. Now, luckily, my daughter left her blanket inside the car, so I can climb under here a little bit. I just can't let her see this video. But nevertheless, there is your 8 HP 75 transmission. Now, one thing I wanted to discuss too is there is no scheduled maintenance for this transmission, so I believe that this fluid is guaranteed for the life of the transmission. I went online, I checked the owner's manual, and there was no interval for it. Now, when I looked at the diesel scheduled maintenance, it did have one for the 68 RFE, which is in the Cummins, and the Eisen transmission that's with the Cummins. And on that note, every 60,000 miles, you have to change the transmission fluid for the 68 RFE, and every 30,000 you have to change it for the Eisen transmission. So this is going to save you on maintenance as well. Whenever you think about cost of ownership, one thing that you will learn really quickly is this HEMI badge is going to save you a lot more money in comparison with that Cummins badge. And the reason why is because this truck has a lot more emissions on it in comparison with this truck. And what that means is, if you open up the gas tank on this one, it's going to have 2 fill points. Now obviously under this red cap is for your diesel, and as you see on this one, this says DEF. DEF is basically diesel exhaust fluid. If you don't know what that is, a quick lesson is, back in 2012 I believe it was, they actually changed the emissions on these trucks to be able to run this basically PP, it's called urea, through the system, and it's supposed to reduce the pollutants that diesel engines put out. It's supposed to be like almost like a water chemical or so, I don't know, like once it balances out, it's like supposed to be water coming out of the tailpipe or something like that. But nevertheless, that DEF tank and fluid is going to cost you something. It's going to cost you additional weight on this truck. It's going to cost you more money to fill up, and you got to keep in mind when you're towing, you use a lot more DEF. So in this event, obviously this HEMI might be a good option for you if you're not towing too heavy. Another thing you want to consider is the DPF. Now this truck does have EGR, it has a lot of stuff, SCR. I mean, there's just so many different things, which is why a lot of people have just skipped this option altogether and just go with gas because of that. But the DPF is the diesel particulate filter. Now, one thing that I've learned from owning a diesel is
I absolutely hate diesel particulate filters.
It's the worst thing for diesel. I hate it. It clogs up.
And if it's too full, you have to keep driving to basically burn off all of the soot that's stuck in there.
I just hate it. It's the worst, absolute dumbest thing that they've ever done with the diesel. And I wish that they would just...
Sorry about that. I went on a tangent, but nevertheless, I hate DPF. So what I was saying was, anytime you drive this truck in the city, or you're driving at lower speeds, or you're idling, anything like that, that diesel particulate filter can fill up with soot. And what happens is the truck has to go into like a regeneration mode, and you have to either drive it for 45 minutes or you have to run it in high idle depending on what truck you have. I think some of the trucks will allow you to run it in high idle to burn off that stuff, which is going to cost you diesel. So if you're driving a lot in the city, you definitely want to consider a HEMI, which is why I believe that the HEMI is a better option here, because this HEMI, you don't have any of the stuff I just mentioned. You don't have to have DEF, you don't have to worry about the DPF getting filled up. This is the truck you want if you're doing a lot of city driving, because some guys do live close to the city, and this is the one you want to go with if you're not towing a lot, over 10,000-12,000 pounds. Now this fourth point is probably one you've never thought about, and it's probably one that is a dead giveaway why the HEMI is the better option. The fourth reason why the HEMI is a better option than the Cummins is because of that right there, that rear axle. Believe it or not, back in 2019, Ram actually changed the axle ratings for the 3/4 ton trucks. Now this axle back here has a 6,390 pound rating. Let me show you where you can find that at real quickly. Hold on one second. If you go on to Ram's website under towing and capability, you can find these towing charts. Now take a look at this example here. So this is a 6.4 liter HEMI. All right, so the gross axle weight rating in the rear is 6,390 pounds. Now if you look for a Cummins diesel, all right, you see 6.7 liter Cummins, check out the rear gross axle weight rating. It's actually 6,040, but you get my point here, right? And if you look back to 2018 and earlier, they both had 6,500 pound rear axles. The only reason why I believe they did that, this is just my opinion, is because you could actually have more payload with this truck in comparison than with the Cummins equipped one. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. My fifth and final point to why you should get a HEMI is payload capacity. Now if you get a 3/4 ton Ram 2500, this is going to really be towards this truck, because your gross vehicle weight rating for this truck is going to be 10,000 pounds, and you're going to have a pretty high payload capacity because that Cummins engine is going to weigh about 800 to 900 pounds. So figure if this truck was equipped with a Cummins, you have to subtract, figure 850 off of this number here, right? So this is 3,172 pounds with the Hemi, and I'll show you what the number is for the Cummins if this truck had one. Now, because this truck doesn't have a lot of options on it, actually this truck does have quite a bit of options on it, but for the most part it's still pretty bare bones. I mean, the only things that are probably going to make it heavy is probably the spray and bed liner, and that's probably about it. I mean, that's probably the heaviest thing on this truck. It does have the fifth wheel prep package too as well. That might make it a little bit heavier too. But if you buy a more spec'd out truck, I did a video on this a little while ago, you might want to check that one out too, but you lose a lot of the payload capacity for this truck here. So when you think about gross axle weight rating and when you think about payload, this Cummins is great for towing 20,000 pounds. This Hemi's probably going to max out around about 16,000 pounds, right? But the problem is with that towing capacity is you can't really get there because of the payload. And the reason why is you figure if a 20,000 pound trailer is going to have 20% pin weight, that's going to be about 4,000 pounds of hitch weight on the truck, and you're going to exceed that easily. Now granted, if you're towing a trailer at 20,000 pounds, you need to be looking at a dually anyways. I mean, that's just my opinion, but that's the truck you're going to want for something that size. But if you're looking at 3/4 ton trucks, you can easily tow a small fifth wheel with this one and not exceed your payload capacity if you're trying to stay under that number. But all in all, I think that the Hemi's a good option. There's a lot of Cummins equipped trucks out here, and I think that the resale value for the Hemi is going to go up because, you know, a lot of people are starting to really see that the diesel is just a hype thing now because, you know, if you think about it, all the emission stuff is just really starting to mess with me a little bit because, you know, I have heard of some guys having issues with their DEF tanks, and, you know, if you aren't careful with your DEF, you could potentially contaminate it, and then you'd have to get it drained out of the system. When you go to pour it into the truck, it does get really messy if you're not careful with it. So I don't know, I think that the Hemi deserves a better or second look if you are in the market for a truck. But hey guys, thank you so much for your time and watching this video. I hope it was helpful. Be sure to give my video a like, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys soon. And in the next video, I'll tell you why I would choose the Cummins over the Hemi.